In the vast archives of the Galactic Historical Repository, there exists a curious record. Not a grand epic of interstellar conquest, nor a tedious account of political machinations between the unified species collective. No, this particular file is marked with the rarest of designations: anomalous historical event, category extinction reversal. The contents detail how the galaxy's most dangerous predators, long believed exterminated, made their unexpected return. Humans. The mere utterance of the word could send shivers through the central nerve clusters of most sentient species. Not that many living beings had actually encountered a human in the flesh. They had been officially classified as extinct for over 3 centuries. The Great Purge, as it was clinically referred to in xenobiological textbooks, had been thorough and efficient. Humanity's alarming tendency toward violence, coupled with their bewildering capacity for both astonishing intelligence and breathtaking stupidity, had made them simply too dangerous to coexist with civilization, or so everyone thought. Commander Zex'Tral of the Arthaxian exploratory fleet scratched at his carapace as he stared at the small bluish planet displayed on the central view screen. His mandibles clicked together nervously, a habit his second-in-command, sub-commander, Clavex had repeatedly pointed out was unbecoming of an officer of his rank. "Sir, preliminary scans confirm the anomalous energy signature," Clavex reported, her compound eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of her console. "It matches no known configuration in our database." Zex'Tral's antennae twitched. Location: the third continent of the Northern Hemisphere. A region once designated as North America in human historical records. The command deck fell silent. No one had expected to find anything of interest on this routine survey mission. Earth had been monitored periodically after the Purge, but as decades turned to centuries with no signs of human activity, the monitoring stations had gradually been decommissioned. The planet had been left to its own devices, its ecosystem slowly healing from the damage inflicted by its former dominant species. "Curious," Zex'Tral finally said. "Very curious indeed. Prepare a landing party. I want to investigate this personally." Clavex's mandibles parted in surprise. "Sir, protocol clearly states that in cases of unexplained phenomena on quarantined worlds, we must first—" "I'm quite familiar with protocol, Sub-Commander," Zex'Tral interrupted. "But I'm also aware that a discovery of this nature could significantly advance our career trajectories. We'll follow standard containment procedures. Assemble a team of 6, including Science Officer Trizbach." 3 hours later, the landing shuttle touched down in a small clearing surrounded by towering vegetation. The Earth's atmosphere, while breathable for Arthaxians with their supplementary filters, felt uncomfortably moist. The gravity was slightly stronger than they were accustomed to, making their exoskeletons creak with each step. "Fascinating," Science Officer Trizbach murmured, waving his atmospheric analyzer around. "The air composition has changed significantly since our last survey. Oxygen levels are higher, carbon dioxide lower. The ecosystem appears to have recovered remarkably well without human interference." "We're not here for a biology lesson," Zex'Tral said impatiently. "The energy signature." "Which direction?" Trizbach consulted his device. "Approximately 1.7 kilometers in that direction, Commander." He pointed toward a dense section of forest. The Arthaxian team moved cautiously through the undergrowth, their segmented legs making soft clicking sounds against the earth. The planet's single sun filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled patterns on their iridescent exoskeletons. Earth was unsettlingly quiet to their sensibilities. No constant background communications, no hum of transport networks, none of the technological noise that permeated civilized worlds. Just as they reached the edge of a small valley, Trizbach suddenly froze. "Commander," he whispered, his voice modulator barely audible, "I'm detecting movement ahead, and heat signatures consistent with mammalian biology." Zex'Tral signaled for the team to take defensive positions. "Could be any of the surviving Earth species. Many mammals survived the Purge." "Yes, but—" Trizbach hesitated. "These readings are consistent with human parameters." Before Zex'Tral could respond, a voice called out from the trees ahead, in perfect, flawless galactic standard, You guys can come out now. Your exoskeletons aren't exactly camouflaged against the green backdrop, you know. The Arthaxians collectively froze, a reaction hardwired into their biology when faced with unexpected threats. Through the trees stepped a figure that, despite being instantly recognizable from historical records, seemed somehow wrong. It walked on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and a head with forward-facing eyes. Human, certainly. But this creature stood nearly 2.5 meters tall, with skin that shimmered slightly in the sunlight. Its proportions were different from historical records. Longer limbs, a more elongated skull, and eyes that were just slightly too large. "Welcome to Earth," the creature said with a grin that displayed teeth that were definitely not standard human dentition. "Been a while since we've had visitors. I'm Jake. Sorry about the whole lurking in the woods thing, but you know how it is. Trust issues and all that." Commander Zex'Tral's training finally overcame his shock. He stepped forward, mandibles held in the formal position of diplomatic engagement. "I am Commander Zex'Tral of the Arthaxian Exploratory Fleet. This planet is under quarantine by order of the Unified Species Collective. Your presence here is unexpected." The human, or whatever it was, laughed. The sound made the Arthaxian's antennae vibrate uncomfortably. "Quarantine. That's a polite way of putting it. I believe systematic genocide would be more historically accurate, but hey, who's keeping score?" Jake shrugged, a casual gesture that somehow seemed more threatening than reassuring. "As for why we're here, well, we never actually left." Commander Zex'Tral exchanged uneasy glances with Klavex. This was impossible. The Purge had been meticulous. The few humans who had escaped Earth had been hunted down across dozens of star systems. The species had been officially declared extinct 287 standard years ago. "If I may," Science Officer Trisbach interjected, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution, "you appear to have changed from historical records of human physiology." Jake's oversized eyes gleamed with amusement. "Yeah, we get that. A lot. Or we would if anyone had been around to notice. 300 years of isolated evolution in a post-apocalyptic environment will do that to a species, especially when you throw in a bit of genetic tinkering. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish with salvaged alien tech and a lot of desperate motivation." Commander Zex'Tral's tactical mind was racing. This was a disaster of galactic proportions. If humans had somehow survived and evolved, their threat potential would need to be completely reassessed. The Unified Species Collective would need to be notified immediately. "I must insist that you accompany us to our vessel," Zex'Tral said, trying to sound authoritative despite his growing unease. "The Collective will want to discuss this development." Jake's smile widened, revealing those unsettling teeth again. "Oh, I don't think so. But I would like to invite you all to our settlement. My people are very interested in learning what's been happening out there in the big bad galaxy while we've been evolving down here." From the trees around them, more figures emerged. Tall, modified humans with the same shimmering skin and oversized eyes. Unlike Jake, who wore what appeared to be crudely fashioned plant fiber clothing, these others wore fragments of what might once have been collective military uniforms, repurposed and modified for their larger frames. "Don't worry," Jake said, apparently noticing the Arthaxians' defensive posture. "If we wanted you dead, you'd never have landed. We've been tracking you since you entered the atmosphere. We're just curious, that's all. It's a human trait the Purge didn't manage to eliminate." That, Commander Zex'Tral thought grimly, was precisely the problem. The human settlement was nothing like Zex'Tral had expected. Instead of primitive dwellings or rudimentary shelters, they were led to the mouth of what appeared to be a natural cave system. But as they ventured inside, it became clear that this was no simple cave. The walls were lined with a luminescent material that pulsed with soft, blue-green light. The tunnels were perfectly shaped, too perfect to be natural formations. And everywhere they looked, there were remnants of technology, pieces of equipment that Zex'Tral recognized as belonging to various species within the collective, all modified and repurposed. "We call this place Haven," Jake explained as he led them deeper into the underground complex. One of 17 similar settlements across what used to be North America. There are others on different continents, but we don't have much contact with them. Global communication infrastructure was one of the first things to go during the purge. Science Officer Trisbach was practically vibrating with excitement, his analytical mind cataloging everything he saw. Fascinating. You've adapted Minervian crystal growth techniques to shape these tunnels, and the lighting appears to be bioluminescent organisms cultivated using cetacean biochemical principles. Jake looked impressed. You know your stuff, Bugman. We had to get creative with what was left behind. The purge wasn't very tidy. Lots of crashed ships, abandoned outposts, discarded tech. One species' garbage became our treasure trove. They entered a large domed chamber where dozens more evolved humans were engaged in various activities. Some worked at consoles cobbled together from mismatched technology. Others tended to what appeared to be hydroponic gardens where plants grew in spiraling columns around pillars of light. How many of you are there? Clavex asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Globally? About 3 million, give or take, Jake replied casually. Down from the pre-purge population of nearly 9 billion, so you guys did a pretty thorough job. Congratulations. The bitter sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable, and Zex'Tral felt his carapace tighten with discomfort. The decision to contain the human threat was made before my time, he said stiffly. Historical records indicate your species posed an existential danger to galactic stability. Jake stopped walking and turned to face the Arthaxian commander. For the first time, his easy demeanor vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. Let's be honest, shall we? Humans weren't exterminated because we were dangerous. We were exterminated because we were unpredictable. The collective couldn't categorize us, couldn't fit us neatly into their organized little galactic community. Sometimes we were brilliant, sometimes stupid, sometimes peaceful, sometimes violent. We didn't follow the evolutionary patterns that made other species comfortable. A female human approached, taller even than Jake, with intricate patterns etched into her shimmering skin. Are these our guests, Jake, or our prisoners? Her voice carried an air of authority that made Zex'Tral suspect she held a position of leadership. Visitors for now, Ilara, Jake replied. They're from the Arthaxian exploratory fleet, detected our power signature and got curious. Ilara's oversized eyes studied the Arthaxians with unnerving intensity. The Council will want to speak with them, especially now that our existence is compromised. Zex'Tral's tactical mind immediately identified the implicit threat in her words. If the humans had managed to survive and evolve for 3 centuries in secret, they would not want that secret revealed. His team could be in grave danger. My vessel is expecting regular communications, he said, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. If we don't report in on schedule, protocols will be initiated. Jake laughed. Relax, Commander. If we were going to kill you, we wouldn't have invited you in for tea. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Actual tea went extinct during the early phases of the purge, along with coffee, which was the real tragedy if you ask me. Ilara gestured toward a doorway on the far side of the chamber. The Council is waiting. They're eager to understand why the collective has suddenly taken an interest in Earth after all this time. As they were led through more tunnels, Zex'Tral sent a series of subtle clicks to Clavex, a form of communication unique to Arthaxians, imperceptible to most other species. Prepare emergency protocols, he clicked. If we don't return to the BA ship, make sure all data is transmitted back to Central Command. To his surprise, Jake turned and said without breaking stride, Your subvocal clicking communications aren't as subtle as you think, Commander. 300 years of hiding from alien detection systems has made us pretty good at picking up on things like that. The chamber of the Human Council was smaller than Zex'Tral had anticipated, but no less impressive. 7 evolved humans sat in a semicircle, each seated on chairs that appeared to be constructed from the command seats of various collective vessels. In the center of the chamber was a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of the solar system, with particular focus on Earth and its immediate space. Welcome, representatives of the Arthaxian exploratory fleet, said the central figure, an elderly human with skin that had faded to a pale blue-gray. I am Adriel, first speaker of Haven. We have monitored your arrival with great interest. Commander Zex'Tral stepped forward, assuming the formal posture of diplomatic engagement. I come representing not just the Arthaxian people, but the unified species collective. Your continued existence represents a significant complication. A complication, repeated Adriel, his tone making it clear he found the word amusingly inadequate. Yes, I suppose from your perspective, discovering that your genocide was incomplete would be a complication. Trizbach, unable to contain his scientific curiosity, burst out. How did you survive? The historical records indicate a thorough planetary cleansing operation. Even the deepest oceanic trenches were subjected to systematic elimination protocols. A younger council member, whose eyes seemed to shift color as she spoke, answered. The collective underestimated human ingenuity and our knowledge of our own planet. There were places your sensors couldn't penetrate, natural formations that blocked your detection systems. And yes, many of us died. But enough survived to rebuild, to adapt, to evolve. With help, added another council member, tapping his elongated fingers on the arm of his chair. Your collective was in such a hurry to leave once they thought the job was done. So careless with their technology. So many crashed ships, abandoned outposts, discarded weapons. Commander Zex'Tral felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The implications were staggering. If the humans had been studying and adapting collective technology for 3 centuries, there was no telling what capabilities they might have developed. What is your intention now? He asked directly. You must know that once I report back, the collective will take action. Adriel smiled, a gesture that seemed both gentle and predatory at once. And what action would that be, Commander? Another purge? I think you'll find we're better prepared this time. He waved a hand, and the holographic display changed to show hundreds of small objects in orbit around Earth. These are our defensive platforms, cobbled together from salvaged tech, yes, but quite effective. We've had centuries to prepare for your return. Jake, who had been standing quietly by the entrance, stepped forward. But that's not what we want. We're not interested in revenge. Well, most of us aren't. What Jake is trying to say, Ilara interjected, is that we've evolved beyond the petty conflicts that characterized humanity before the Purge. We've had 300 years to reflect on our mistakes, and yours. Commander Zex'Tral's tactical mind was racing. This situation was unprecedented. Protocol demanded he report the continued existence of humans immediately, but doing so would likely trigger a second extermination attempt. And based on what he was seeing, such an attempt might not be successful. It could lead to a devastating war. What exactly do you propose? He asked cautiously. Adriel leaned forward. A new relationship. Not as extinct species and exterminators, but as equals. The collective believed humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous to coexist with. We've spent 3 centuries proving we can survive against all odds. Perhaps it's time to see if we can do more than merely survive. Trizbach's analytical mind couldn't help but see the potential. The adaptability you've demonstrated, it's remarkable. Such traits could be invaluable in cooperative scientific endeavors. Precisely, said the color-eyed council member. We don't want war. We want recognition. We want exchange of knowledge and technology. We want to join the galactic community, not as a subjugated species, but as a contributing member. Commander Zex'Tral was silent for a long moment. Everything in his training told him that humans were dangerous, that their continued existence represented a threat. But looking at what they had accomplished, surviving extinction, adapting alien technology, evolving their very biology, he couldn't help but wonder if the collective had made a terrible mistake 3 centuries ago. I cannot make such decisions unilaterally, he finally said. This matter will need to be addressed by the highest levels of the collective council. Jake laughed. Translation: I need to tell my bosses so they can decide whether to try killing us all again. Jake, Adriel said sharply, Enough. He turned back to Zex'Tral. We understand your position, Commander, but before you make your report, we would like to show you more of what we've become. Perhaps with a fuller understanding, you might advocate for a different approach than the one taken by your predecessors. Zex'Tral hesitated, then nodded. Very well, show me. What followed was a tour unlike anything Zex'Tral could have imagined. The human settlement extended far beyond the initial chambers they had seen, a vast underground network of tunnels, caverns and installations that housed not just living quarters but research facilities, agricultural zones, and manufacturing centers. But it was the humans themselves that proved most fascinating. As they moved through the settlement, Trizbok conducted discrete scans that confirmed what was visually apparent. These were not simply humans who had survived. They had changed themselves on a fundamental level. Our initial modifications were medical necessities, explained a human scientist named Mara, who had joined their tour group. Her skin had a distinct purple tinge, and small luminescent spots decorated her temples. The Purge used biological weapons designed specifically to target human physiological weaknesses. Those of us who survived needed to change our biology to resist these weapons. But you went far beyond mere resistance, Trizbok observed, his scientific excitement overriding protocol. Your skeletal structure has been reinforced, muscle density increased, and these epidermal modifications, he gestured to her shimmering skin. Photosynthetic properties, Mara said with evident pride. We can supplement our nutrition through light absorption, useful when food sources are limited in a post-apocalyptic environment, and the luminescence serves as a form of non-verbal communication. As if to demonstrate, the spots on her temples pulsed briefly and Jake's responded in kind. The changes accelerated with each generation, Jake added. Natural selection on steroids, you might say. Those better adapted to our new reality survived and reproduced. Those who couldn't adapt, didn't. And you accelerated the process artificially, Klovex observed. It wasn't a question. Of course, Mara acknowledged. We had access to genetic manipulation technology from various crashed collective ships. It was adapt or die, and humanity has always been good at choosing adaptation over extinction. They were led to a massive underground chamber where dozens of humans were engaged in what appeared to be a training exercise. But it was unlike any military drill Zex'Tral had ever witnessed. The humans moved with impossible speed and coordination, their bodies flowing like liquid as they navigated complex obstacles. Some demonstrated strength that should have been beyond their physiological capabilities, lifting and throwing objects that would challenge even the strongest Arthaxian warriors. Defensive training, Ilara explained. We've incorporated elements from 17 different martial traditions from across the collective, adapted, of course, for our new physiology. Zex'Tral watched with growing unease. If even a fraction of what he was seeing was representative of the broader human population, any attempt at a second purge would result in catastrophic losses for the collective forces. You've been preparing for war, he stated flatly. Jake shrugged. We've been preparing for survival. There's a difference. Is there? Zex'Tral challenged. Everything I've seen suggests you've built your entire society around the expectation of another confrontation with the collective. Wouldn't you? Ilara countered. If someone had tried to exterminate your entire species, wouldn't you prepare for the possibility they might try again? Before Zex'Tral could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the chamber. The training humans immediately ceased their exercises, moving with practiced efficiency toward exits and equipment stations. What's happening? Klovex demanded, her posture shifting to defensive readiness. Adriel, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. It appears your ship has grown impatient with your extended absence, Commander. They've launched search drones. On a nearby screen, Zex'Tral could see aerial images of small Arthaxian reconnaissance vehicles moving systematically through the forest around the cave entrance. Standard protocol, he explained quickly. When an away team fails to report in on schedule. We understand protocols, Commander, Adriel interrupted. Better than you might think. The question now is, what happens next? The tension in the chamber was palpable. Centuries of human preparation for another confrontation with the collective seemed to hang in the balance, dependent on what happened in the next few minutes. "Allow me to contact my ship," Zex'Tral said carefully. "I can explain that we're engaged in peaceful contact. There's no need for this to escalate." Jake and Alara exchanged looks, and some unspoken communication seemed to pass between them through the luminescent patterns on their skin. "Very well," Adriel finally said. "But understand this, Commander. The moment we detect any aggressive action from your vessel, we will activate our defensive systems. We will not allow ourselves to be purged again." Zex'Tral was escorted to a communications terminal, where he quickly established contact with his ship. After assuring his executive officer that the away team was safe and engaged in diplomatic contact with an unexpected indigenous population, carefully avoiding any mention of humans, he ordered the recall of the search drones. "A wise decision," Adriel commented once the communication ended. "Now we can continue our discussion without the distraction of imminent conflict." "I've bought us time," Zex'Tral replied bluntly. "Nothing more. Once I return to my ship, I will be obligated to report this discovery to the Collective Council." "Of course," Adriel said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We would expect nothing less. But perhaps before you go, there's one more thing you should see." They were led deeper into the complex, through security barriers that made even Zex'Tral's military-trained eyes widen with recognition. The technology was an impressive hybrid of various collective systems, adapted and improved in ways he hadn't thought possible without advanced manufacturing facilities. Finally, they entered a chamber unlike any other they had seen. The walls were lined with a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In the center stood a device that pulsed with energy, its design unlike anything in the collective's technological catalog. "This," Adriel said with quiet pride, "is why your sensors detected us after 3 centuries of successful hiding." Trisbach moved forward automatically, his scientific curiosity overwhelming caution. "Extraordinary. The energy signature is like nothing I've ever seen. What is it?" "We call it the Nexus," Mara explained. "It's the culmination of our research into dimensional physics, a field the collective has largely ignored due to the instability risks." "Dimensional physics?" Klavex repeated skeptically. "You're talking about theoretical concepts that the greatest scientific minds in the collective have dismissed as impractical." Jake grinned. "That's the thing about humans. Tell us something's impossible, and some idiot will immediately try to prove you wrong. Sometimes that idiot even succeeds. The Nexus creates controlled ruptures in space-time," Mara continued, her voice taking on the precise tone of a scientist explaining her life's work. "Small, stable passages that allow instantaneous transit between fixed points." Trisbach's compound eyes widened. "You've developed teleportation technology?" "That's an oversimplification," Mara replied, "but essentially correct. We can move people and materials between any of our 17 global settlements instantly. And more recently, we've succeeded in establishing our first extraplanetary link." "To where?" Zex'Tral demanded, his tactical mind immediately assessing the strategic implications. Adriel's expression was unreadable. "Mars, for now. We've established a small colony there. But the theoretical range is unlimited. Given enough power and precise coordinates, we could potentially create links to any point in the galaxy." The implications were staggering. If humans could teleport anywhere instantaneously, no quarantine could contain them. No military force could effectively combat them. They could appear inside secure installations, bypass any defensive perimeter, strike anywhere without warning. "You understand now," Adriel said, watching Zex'Tral's reaction. "Why we revealed ourselves by activating the Nexus at full capacity. It was a calculated risk. We knew it might attract attention, but we needed to test the extended range capabilities." "Or perhaps," Zex'Tral suggested, his tactical mind racing, "you wanted to be discovered. You've been preparing for 3 centuries. Now you're ready to announce your return to the galactic stage. Jake clapped slowly. And here I thought Arthaxians were all mandibles and no intuition. You're sharper than you look, Commander. Jake, Ilara warned, but Adriel raised a hand to silence them both. The Commander is correct, the first speaker acknowledged. This encounter is not accidental. We've been monitoring collective communications for decades. We know the political landscape has been shifting. The species that were most aggressive in pushing for our extermination have lost influence. Younger generations have questioned the wisdom of the Purge. The time is right for humanity to re-emerge. But on our terms, not as victims or subjects. Commander Zex'Tral found himself in an unprecedented situation. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The discovery that humans had not only survived but evolved and advanced technologically beyond many collective species would send shockwaves through galactic society. What exactly do you want from me? He asked finally. To be our messenger, Adriel replied simply. Return to your people. Tell them what you've seen. Make them understand that any attempt to finish what they started 3 centuries ago would be inadvisable. But also tell them that we're not interested in revenge. We want recognition. We want diplomatic relations. We want trade and cultural exchange. And if the collective refuses? Jake's expression darkened. Then we remain in the shadows, building, expanding, preparing. And next time it won't be a polite invitation to our home that brings us to the collective's attention. That's enough, Jake, Adriel said firmly. Commander, we hope it won't come to that. Humanity has changed. We've had centuries to reflect on our own violent tendencies, the very traits that made the collective fear us. We've worked to channel our adaptability, our creativity into positive directions. Yet you've clearly prepared for war, Clavex pointed out. We've prepared for survival, Ilara corrected. There's a difference even if you can't see it. Zex'Tral considered his options. Protocol demanded immediate quarantine measures calling for reinforcements, perhaps even preliminary strike actions. But his instincts told him such moves would be disastrous. These evolved humans had capabilities the collective hadn't anticipated. Attempting to contain them by force would likely provoke exactly the conflict that the original Purge had sought to prevent. I will convey your message, he said finally. But I cannot promise how it will be received. Adriel nodded. That is all we ask. That, and a chance to prove that humanity deserves a place in the galactic community. As they prepared to depart, Jake approached Zex'Tral while the others were engaged in final discussions. A word of advice, Commander, he said quietly. When you make your report, emphasize the Nexus. Make sure they understand what it means. That quarantine is no longer an option. It might help certain parties choose diplomacy over alternatives. Zex'Tral's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Is that a threat, Jake? Just a friendly suggestion between potential future allies, Jake replied with that unsettling grin. After all, wouldn't it be ironic if the species the collective tried to exterminate ended up saving it from its own short-sightedness? Saving it? From what? Jake's expression turned serious. You've been so busy maintaining your perfect galactic order that you've stopped exploring, stopped innovating. We've been watching your transmissions, remember? Your civilization has been stagnant for generations. Meanwhile, there are threats stirring in the dark between galaxies that your sensors haven't even detected yet. What threats? Zex'Tral demanded. That, Jake said, his luminescent spots pulsing softly, is a conversation for after diplomatic relations are established. Consider it an incentive. Back aboard his vessel, Commander Zex'Tral faced the most difficult report of his career. His executive officer and bridge crew listened in stunned silence as he explained what they had discovered. When he finished, the command deck was quiet for a long moment. Humans, his executive officer finally said, the word laden with historical dread. Living, evolved humans with teleportation technology. The collective council will have us all demoted to larval caretakers for bringing this news. Perhaps, Zex'Tral acknowledged, or perhaps they'll recognize the opportunity this presents. Opportunity. The weapons officer's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Sir, with respect, these are humans we're talking about. The most dangerous predator species ever encountered. The purge was ordered for a reason. Was it? Trisbach interjected. The historical justification has always been presented as settled fact, but I've studied enough xenobiology to know that humans were unique precisely because they didn't fit our understanding of evolutionary patterns. They were deemed dangerous because they were unpredictable, not because they had actually posed a galactic threat. And now they have teleportation technology, Clavex added quietly, which means containment is no longer an option, even if the collective were to decide on a second purge attempt. Zex'Tral moved to the central view screen, looking down at the blue-green planet below. Prepare a priority transmission to Collective Central Command, classification, existential revelation, and set course back to Arthaxian space. I believe I'm about to become either the most famous or the most infamous commander in the fleet. As the ship broke orbit, Zex'Tral couldn't help but wonder what changes would come from this discovery. The galaxy had developed for 3 centuries believing humans were safely extinct. Now everything would change. Species that had been dominant might find their positions challenged. Technological stagnation might give way to rapid advancement. And somewhere out there, according to Jake, lurked threats that even the Collective's vast sensor networks hadn't detected. Perhaps, Zex'Tral reflected, the return of humanity wasn't the disaster it initially appeared to be. Perhaps it was exactly what the galaxy needed. A dose of unpredictability in an order that had grown too comfortable, too static. He thought back to Jake's parting words. Tell your leaders we're back. We're different. And this time we're not going anywhere. One thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. In the following months, the revelation of humanity's survival and evolution sent shockwaves through the unified species collective. Emergency sessions of the Collective Council stretched on for weeks as representatives from over 300 sentient species debated the implications and possible responses. The Arthaxians, through Commander Zex'Tral's first-hand account, found themselves in the unexpected position of advocating for diplomatic engagement rather than military containment. The tactical assessment was clear. Attempting to complete the purge would be costly at best, catastrophic at worst. The humans have demonstrated technological capabilities that exceed our projections, Zex'Tral testified before the council. Their dimensional transit system alone represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of physics. Combined with their biological adaptations and defensive preparations, any military action would result in unacceptable casualties. Not all council members were convinced. The Duraxian representative, whose species had been among the most vocal proponents of the original purge, pounded his gelatinous appendage on the speaking podium. Have we learned nothing from history? He demanded, his translator conveying his agitation through rapid-fire syllables. Humans are inherently dangerous. Their unpredictability, their capacity for violence, their irrational decision-making processes. These traits made them incompatible with galactic civilization 3 centuries ago. No amount of evolution or technological advancement changes their fundamental nature. Others were more pragmatic. The cetacean ambassador, her holographic form rippling like the oceans of her homeworld, countered, "The existence of humans can no longer be denied, nor can they be easily eliminated. The practical question before us is not whether we approve of their continued existence, but how we engage with them as a reality." In the end, pragmatism prevailed. A diplomatic mission was authorized, not to Earth, which remained technically under quarantine, but to a neutral location where representatives of humanity and